It is 20 years since two American high school students wearing balaclavas and trench coats burst into Columbine High School in Colorado, firing automatic weapons and throwing homemade bombs. They'd earlier planted two backpacks filled with pipe bombs in the cafeteria. Luckily, they failed to go off, or hundreds of people could have died. The two, though, Eric Harris and Dylan Clayball, still forced their way through the school. 12 students and one teacher were murdered, and the perpetrators then committed suicide. At the time, it was the deadliest shooting at a high school in US history, and it is still perhaps the event which really sparked such horror and debate about gun control.
Soon after the Columbine tragedy, Congress considered common sense gun legislation to require Brady background checks at the gun shows, child safety locks for new handguns, and a ban on the importation of large-capacity ammunition clips. With courage and a tie-breaking vote for the Vice President, the Senate faced down the gun lobby, stood up to the American people, and passed this legislation. But the House failed to follow suit. Now, we have all seen what happens when guns fall into the wrong hands.
Of course, there have been numerous other shootings at educational establishments. Just this May, one student killed and 8 wounded less than 10 kilometres from Columbine in an apparent copycat shooting at a science and technology school. 17 killed in last year's high school shooting in Parkland, 27 at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012, and 32 victims at the Virginia Tech University in 2007. Despite all that, though, the gun control debate in the US has achieved little. In Colorado State, teachers can even be trained to carry a gun at school. 20 years on then from Columbine, Fanny Allar and Eleanor Roblo revisit the high school where those most deeply affected by what happened still hold vivid memories and some deep anger at the lack of change.
I was a sophomore at Columbine in 1999, so April 20th, 1999. It was just kind of one of those normal days, and I was in math class with a bunch of my friends.
It was a day like this. It was the first really nice day of spring.
The chaos grew. Some students and teachers locked themselves into rooms and used cell phones to call for rescue.
On April 20th, I was at work, and I overheard somebody say something about Columbine. And I peeked my head in and I said, my dad teaches there.
Joining us, 2 young men apparently dressed in long black trench coats opened fire about an hour and a half ago at a high school just outside of Denver in Littleton, Colorado.
I was like 5 or 10 minutes into my class and the fire alarm went off.
Somebody pulled the fire alarm.
Finding out whether their child might have been one of the people who was...
Someone came into the classroom, yelled something, and I said, "We need to get out."
And one of the kids came up to me and said, "Mrs. H, there's people in there with guns, and Rachel's dead on the steps."
Black trench coats and black masks came in shooting and began working their way through the school. Teachers raced ahead to classrooms, yelling for students to run.
It was actually the media that told us he was dead.
And those who had seen the shooting said the gunmen were members of a school gang.
On the 20th of April, 1999, at Columbine High School, 2 teenagers shot dead 12 students and a teacher before committing suicide. 20 years later, the school is still right there, almost exactly the way it was, but inaccessible. Requests for interviews inside the school are rejected. Any outsiders are understandably stopped by the police.
Within the past year, just over 2,100 people have tried to come to the school or get into the school. That's more than any other school in Jefferson County.
And what kind of people try to come here?
Some people use this school to gain inspiration, to harm others. They use it as their motivation. That's why we need to be here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just to reiterate what he said, if we catch you back on campus at any other point in time, you'll actually be cited for trespassing, okay?
Okay, no problem.
The trauma from that day in Columbine sits deep. In the suburb, in the city of Denver, and across America, most people remember where they were when the school shooting happened. Devon remembers better than most. This young woman was a classmate of one of the shooters and of several of the victims. She never left the state of Colorado and now works in the beer industry. Time has helped her take control of her memories from that day.
When you're the survivor of a trauma, it's always a part of your life, and it's always there. I consciously think about the shootings every day. It's not so much a worry of if it can happen again, or it's more when it will happen again, where it will happen again. Is there a way to prevent it from happening again? What happened at Columbine was a shock for everyone. I mean, we're unincorporated Jefferson County. Littleton is very white bread. It's very middle-class, suburban. I think it's very easy to distance yourself from violence when there's an other. When we talk about quote-unquote inner-city violence or racial violence or gang violence, but when it's happening in middle-class white America, I think that was a really big shock to a lot of middle-class white Americans who believe that they were removed from that kind of violence.
Columbine was a precedent. It was one of the first mass shootings in the United States that was covered by all US TV channels. For hours, Americans were able to follow the police operation and the eyewitness accounts from rescued teenagers. Columbine was an upheaval in a society in which social networks did not yet exist. Barbara Gall was an art teacher at Columbine High School in '99. One of her ways of coping are frequent visits to the memorial for the victims.
Columbine was my home. I spent 8 or 10 hours a day there for 26 years. So that was my life, my family. It broke our hearts. I mean, how could that happen to us, really?
I always cry. Such a loss.
It was supposed to be a wake-up call, but it wasn't. And it's still, you know, that people can't name a lot of the other shootings, but they can name Columbine because that was the first big one. And partly, the media of all kinds went absolutely berserk. It was over a year before my daily paper that I get did not have a Columbine story in it.
Barbara is now over 70. The shock and the impact of the shooting on her life were such that she still takes any opportunity she can to honor the memories of the victims. At a rock concert, the band on stage performs a song that was written by Columbine students after the massacre.
A lot of anger, and anger that the kids, 14, 15, 16, however old they were, had to go through this at their young age. You know, it wasn't fair to them to make them have to go through all that trauma that early in life.
Contrary to many media reports after the tragedy, the two killers were not complete outsiders. They are now seen as fragile teenagers, fascinated by weapons. Connie is the daughter of David Sanders, the teacher killed at Columbine. After his death, she decided to become a therapist to treat behavioral problems similar to those of her father's murderers.
I really felt that somebody could have helped them. And so I decided to work with the people that are creating the harm. Everybody wants to believe that this would never happen to them. We were normal. We were just a normal family. Dad was a teacher, Mom stayed home, he was a grandpa. We were normal, and never did we ever think that something like this would happen to us. People from all over the world reach out to us because they were so heartbroken about what happened at Columbine. And now these shootings happen so frequently, everybody just blinks.
Since the Columbine massacre, more than 200 people have been killed in school shootings in America. Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland, they are all now part of the list. Schools are vulnerable places, prime targets for shooters. That's how Gina sees it. She's a kindergarten and elementary school teacher. In a country in which owning a weapon is a constitutional right, few other issues divide Americans as much as gun rights.
In the last 20 years, since Columbine happened, everywhere I go, not just as a teacher, I feel like I could be a victim. Gun laws are important, but regulating guns, regulating high-capacity magazines, regulating things that the bad guys don't care about isn't going to fix the problem. But if a bad guy walks into a school, and it's quite possible that there are a whole bunch more people who are carrying firearms, he might think twice. Or the people carrying firearms might stop him before it is a mass shooting.
That's an opinion shared by Quinn Cunningham. This former police officer was faced with a mass killing just 5 years ago. He has since become an expert in teacher training. In the United States, a gunman attacking a school is a distinct possibility. And it's in those first moments when lives are on the line.
We, as a society in the United States of America, we protect our money more than we protect our children. We protect our casinos more than we protect our children. Our children are the legacy of our country, and they should be able to go to school without worrying about getting hurt by somebody, a madman with a gun. When it comes to armed staff, in the schools, they are the first responders. As a law enforcement officer, if a call comes out, it could take between 5 and 45 minutes to respond to something like this. Whereas they are here, they are more equipped, better equipped to handle the situation before law enforcement can even get there.
In the last 20 years, gun laws have changed very little in Colorado. A permit isn't required to buy a gun. A potential owner just needs to be over 18 and have a clean criminal record. The state attorney general, though, has decided to take on those gun laws. He's been in office since January. His state recently passed the red flag law, a law that allows people to ask a judge to seize the weapons of a person they deem to be suspicious.
The point that we need to do better at is getting guns out of the hands of people who are mentally ill, who are a danger to themselves or others. And more people kill themselves with guns than kill others. This law that we've worked for is going to be an important tool to save lives. We know there are plans for more Columbines in the future. And part of the challenge that the internet has brought is it's brought more of this information to everybody, which makes those who want to conduct these mass murders maybe emboldened to think, I should do this just like it happened at Columbine.
More than half of Colorado's counties voted against the law, and some sheriffs even promised not to enforce it. The state is divided, much like the rest of the country, between Democrats and Republicans, between rural areas and the big cities. The debate hasn't shifted much, despite the statistics. Every year, guns kill tens of thousands of Americans. In 2017, for example, 40,000 people died by gunshot.
I believe it impacts generations of people. I don't think anybody, even if they didn't lose somebody, we're all impacted. People are watching this on the news. I know people that are traumatized just by the images that they saw. We're all impacted by this, and that's why it's going to take all of us to stop it. I don't want anybody else to have to go to a memorial place to talk to their loved ones. I don't want this for anybody. And I will work every day until the end of time, being kind to terrible people if I need to, because I don't want anybody else to do this. It's gotta stop.
Connie visits her father's grave once a month. Over 20 years have passed, but the pain has not.
Oh my gosh, I miss him so much. I just really wish he was here. He's missed so many things. So many things. I don't know how we've made it 20 years without him. His last words were, "Tell my girls I love them." I hope he knows we love him too.
In the face of mass killings, the country seems deadlocked, unable to find a solution to a distinctly American problem. Connie, Devon, and Barbara are all collateral victims of gun violence.
I've never been the same. I'll never be the same. I've never felt safe since. I never will.
Columbine has changed a lot of lives for the better. We've learned a lot. It's time that we start changing it.
You know, that day they tried to destroy us. All they did was make us stronger.
To many Americans, Columbine is more than just a one-off event. It was the first of many school massacres to come.
Fanny Allard and Eleanor Roblo reporting there for this week's Revisited. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Of course, you can catch it and the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. Thanks for watching. More news coming very shortly.